Hello, everyone. Welcome to eLearnChat, where you always learn something new. And today I'm joined by my good friend coming to us from just outside London. She is Lesley Price. Hey, Lesley, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm very good. I was looking after my grandson, my first grandson today, and today happens to be the 1 month birthday, if you can have a 1 month birthday, of my newest grandson.
They grow fast. You'll be in high school soon.
Oh,
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Yep. And in studio, we've got Harold Muliati. He is our video producer. And we've got a great guest today. Her name, Dr. Susan Nash, who happens to be also a very good friend and a co-host on a different show we're doing called eBizChat. And before that, we were doing Life Edge together. Here we go. More and more people are working remotely every day. Your company may already be remote. You may be new to working remotely, whether you're a worker or a manager. Working remotely has some challenges and some very good points to it as well. In our training, we'll make sure that you learn how to work remotely, how to build trust, how to do all the things that make remote working successful. And we'll also talk about some of the pitfalls and what to avoid. Working remotely for workers and managers. It's our new course on Udemy. Thanks. This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation. Digital learning development, media development, corporate video, management consulting, and more. Visit us at www.relate.com. Thanks. And we are back in that center position of power. It is Dr. Susan Nash. Hi, Susan. How are you?
I have a nonverbal message. I'm happy to be here. Anyway.
Now, Susan, both of you, Susan and Lesley don't really know each other. However, they both have been called the queens of e-learning in their respective areas. For example, Lesley was one of the first people to be, if not the first, in England to be doing e-learning, the queen of e-learning in England. And Susan actually has a website called the eLearning Queen, though, as we find out, she actually serves the eLearning Queen. Susan, you've been involved in e-learning, and by the way, you guys share another thing. You both have degrees in business. You've got an economics degree, and Lesley has an economics and marketing degree. So very, very interesting that you guys both wound up in training and leadership and all the things that you guys do. So I could actually just sit back and have you guys talk and not do anything today. It'd be fun. But Susan, what made you get into e-learning?
Well, I didn't mean to jump in there earlier, but the reason I wanted to say that, well, you never know. Lesley and I have actually been in touch with each other. We've emailed back and forth, but it was 15 years ago when you were at eLearning Guild. You remember that?
Yeah.
And so that was years ago, and I was at the University of Oklahoma, and then I was at Excelsior College, and I was the director of e-learning, and then I was an associate dean of there.
Yeah, but I think
those
I
are
was
the
just
early
saying
days.
that you and I are not people that keep in touch on a day-to-day basis.
It's just so funny because we've never met like face to face, but we did correspond. And then I mean, when I was in the early days of e-learning, and just to address Rick's point, I got interested because it was just, I was having students who couldn't attend, they were being deployed or whatever. This is in the late 90s, a long time ago. And so I thought, okay, well, let's just figure out how to do this. And there were a lot of kind of failing internet service providers that decided they do value add by starting to host streaming or doing things to do during the dot-com boom to get into e-learning. There were all different kinds of startups at that point.
And that was when I first got into e-learning, because at that point I started in the late 90s, and I started introducing e-learning into the community college that I was working in back in the mid to late 90s, and then
Exactly.
started running e-learning in the college, and then ran it regionally, and then went to work for the UK government. And that's when it was in between all these times I got involved with the e-learning guild, because I was one of there weren't many of us about who were doing this. You know, back in the day, we really were few and far between.
Oh yeah, it was fun. It was like pioneers, and what I liked about it early on is that you could be really creative. I'm not saying that I'm against course design documents and the rigidity of it, the factory model. It's just that I got really bored with it for until the pandemic, and then it changed again. But it was just so um, mechanical.
I think that's
Oh,
one
I
of the
don't know
problems.
if
Yeah.
you unfortunately, I say unfortunately in probably the wrong sense of the word, but my daughter is a primary school teacher. And I don't know what it's like in the States, but all the schools in the UK are on lockdown. So my daughter is a primary school teacher, normally teaching 7 and 8-year-olds, and she's having to do everything online.
Mm-hmm.
And in the nicest, and this is said in the nicest way possible, an awful lot of teachers, although they may be familiar with the internet and they maybe use the internet all the time at home, they don't necessarily have the skills to be able to teach online.
Exactly. Okay. I wasn't clear before. What I meant to say is that up to 2019, I was teaching classes and developing courses and working and doing different things. But and obviously doing a lot of things with new kinds of assessment, things like that. But there wasn't that kind of urgency that there was in the late 90s. Then, with the lockdown and the pandemic, and everyone instantly having to go to online, and on top of that, um, it was it was a hybrid of synchronous and asynchronous.
Yeah.
And so suddenly we're using Zoom or whatever, but it just turned a big 180, and it's suddenly so interesting again because all the issues we were dealing with earlier suddenly became relevant again.
And I don't know what it's like in the States. What really bothers and upsets me, and I am prepared to say it on the show, is that back in 2010, all the organizations that I was working with when I was working for the government agency, every organization I was working with had a plan. We had a plan for what we called home access, to give the children who didn't have, or the young children and young people who didn't have access to devices at home, we'd a plan to give them home access. We'd a plan to give them connectivity. We'd a plan to train all the teachers in the schools. We had a plan to teach all the lecturers in community education and higher education in what you call colleges. And in 2010, the government closed the lot and shut all the programs down and all the organizations down. And now, 10, 11 years later, there's and even the government Public Accounts Committee said it was the biggest mistake the government was making. But 3 companies, Microsoft, RM, and Capita all said, we can do it. And did they do it? 0. And now the government is now playing catch up. Major catch up. I don't know what it's like in the States, but in the UK, my daughter, how can a teacher spend her day doing online, and then in the evenings and when she's not teaching, she's the help desk for all the teachers who don't know?
Yeah, I don't think it's all that different over here right now.
It's not different. In fact, today at 4, I'm supposed to help a panicked teacher. So, anyway.
It's interesting. Now, Susan, you became the eLearning queen. In fact, I think Harold has that site up. Let's see. There we go.
And you have eLearning Corgi.
Now it's the eLearning Corgi. So it has evolved into a different. I guess the alien Corgi took over, didn't he? So.
Well, the story behind that is the Queen was always the Corgi, and it's because Corgis are Queen Elizabeth's favorite dog.
Yeah.
And the first Corgi's dog was named Susan, and it bit a beefeater, and I just thought that was kind of cute.
That is cute.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Beautiful dogs. By the way, Susan, I'm not the eLearning queen. My nickname in this country is the networking queen. Because of the amount of people that I know.
I knew you were a queen, yes. And she is a master networker. She knows everybody I don't know and more.
And everybody you do know.
I don't know that many people. So she does. When I went to England about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now, to the Learning Technologies Conference, it was funny. There was no one she didn't know. There were 15,000 people there. She knew everybody. It's just amazing.
But you met lots of people. You and your dear wife, Leslie, met so many people. They were so kind, Susan. To say thank you, because obviously I do this show, and to say thank you to me for doing this show, they actually flew over, Rick and his wife Leslie flew over at their own expense to support Learn Appeal at the Learning Technologies Conference.
Yeah,
now, how kind is
It was
that?
a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was fun. Long flight, but it was fun.
But no, the eLearning Queen thing, I mean, I just thought it had a nice ring to it. I always thought I was the assistant to the Queen.
Right.
But I also realized it made me look like I had delusional disorder.
Not if you like corgis.
Let me guess, the Corgi was talking to you. But you did one thing. I think those videos they're on YouTube. I know that. You did the A to Z's or Z's, if you will, of e-learning. And you had one for every letter, you had a topic in e-learning, and you did videos on every one of those. Those were great. They were fun.
They're still there.
They're still there. We should highlight one a week or something. Just put one of those out there. Because you have quite a few of those. Are they on your website too?
You know what? They are someplace, but I need to put them out there again.
Yep, they're fun.
So what are you doing? What are you doing now, then, Susan? What are you doing? How have you taken all of that forward? So yes, you and I have been in this industry a long time. So you mentioned a minute ago about the pandemic. So what kind of impact has that had?
Well, we launched. What I've been doing is a lot of kind of hybrid types of things. So I've been doing a lot of like workshops that are designed to develop a learning community and also networking. So that we just are launching one Wednesday. It's called next Wednesday, called Pivoting 2021, Thriving with Change. And the first I did the 20 series one, 20 episode series in 2020. It was called Pivoting During the Pandemic, and so they were live, and I archived them on my YouTube channel. And then we're using them. I did them in conjunction with work, but then also I've been using them as materials for e-learning. And then we also ended up launching a number of instead of asynchronous, more synchronous or hybrid synchronous, asynchronous courses. And I mean, it's just interesting because at first people were really excited to be in a synchronous class, and then finding a lot of best practices with that. For example, it's better to be hybrid, so you have asynchronous and synchronous, and then to make sure that you don't have like 4 hours at a time. Break it up and have a lot of engagers, and also make sure to situate the learning so that people are connected to it and it's relevant. I think that's one of the things that in a time when there's a lot of change and panicky feelings and grief and all sorts of feelings, one has to even have better engagers, because you're having to overcome distractions and that sort of surge of intrusive thoughts about all kinds of things.
Now, Susan.
And what about skills, Susan? How are people coping? Because one of the things that my daughter says is that because she's obviously grown up with me as a mother, and I was quite a strict mother, so I didn't just allow her and my son to go on and play the whole time on the internet. I actually taught them how to use the internet for learning. So they learn from when they were teenagers how to use it, and then how to use it when they were chatting, talking with people, how to stay safe online as well. So how are people coping with that during this pandemic?
Well, they're listening to QAnon, and they're.
Yeah.
Do they know how to do that?
Badly.
I think everybody knows how to surf, and then now everybody's going to BitChute or whatever. They're finding all about these new platforms, and they're so those are the new skills.
I'm thinking, do not compute.
Yep.
I can see Rick thinking the same.
Well, one thing Susan does, and I don't know if you want to talk about your job a little bit, but she is director of training and events. Are you at liberty to talk about your job?
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
So my his title is Director of Innovation, Emerging Science and Technology.
Better
Association
title.
of Petroleum Geologists. And so basically what I do is I work with our events, and they're all online now. So one of the things that we did do is we converted our face-to-face events with 3,000 attendees to online, and then incorporated a lot of training in that too. So that was fun, but I'm always scouting for new technologies, because one of the programs that we've started up is one that's called UPitch, and it's also this pivoting series too. I'm rolling it in there, where we bring together people who have funding, who invest, with people who have new technologies. And they may be startups, but they also may be in commercialization levels too, like a lot of blockchain, for example. And then looking at new needs, for example, responsibly sourced gas or responsibly sourced minerals, to make sure that they're not like from conflict zones or knowing the provenance. And so I think that having these actual real needs attached to that has been really interesting and animating. And I was just joking about like the new alt tech platforms, et cetera, that people are distracted by. But it is interesting how you see asymmetry in skill development. A person might have a lot of skill in doing things with TikTok and and Instagram, and finding things on BitChute, but they know nothing about using their online library, for example.
Right.
And,
Now,
and they don't know how to differentiate between good sources and bad sources.
now, in your case, Susan, you deal with you had to deal with the pandemic like all of us did because events changed and everything changed for your company. But you had to deal with one other thing, which is not easy at all, and that is that the petroleum oil industry and gas too, in this country and in many parts of the world, semi-collapsed at the same time. And so that created a whole mess of other challenges. And one thing that Susan was doing is she was giving a series and there were a lot of CEOs involved in the series and helping people transition from one thing to another to keep them alive, to keep them going. And that I thought was pretty good when you were doing those. What other things have you been doing to help out in your industry, which got hit pretty hard? It's starting to come up again, but it's slow. What other things did you do? I know you used a lot of technology to get people aware of what's going on and some of the options.
Sure. Well, putting together different things about like skills, like using Python and analytics, things like that, so that people have new base levels of skills so they can diversify. Also looking at different energy. I mean, it's kind of sad. I think we are kind of the new tobacco in terms of the industry, and there are a lot of companies that want to have like net zero in terms of carbon, and so companies are changing so that they can do that. How do they get there? One of the ways is to reduce emissions from from producing gas wells. So those are some of the information sharing types of things that we're making available. Lots of different initiatives, really, just that one, and also networking. We're trying to get people. The isolation has what we're seeing as kind of an extreme thing, and people are laid off and they're feeling discouraged, hiding away. So we started having virtual social gatherings. So our first one was a pretty big success. It was called My Virtual Outcrop. An outcrop is where the rock comes up to the surface, and it's like a road cut, things like that. So we had My Virtual Outcrop, and we had people from all over the world showed their experiences in the field, and they had like 2 minutes apiece, and it was so much fun. So we're going to have another one again for Valentine's Day. My favorite outcrop. This is a selenite gypsum heart from the well, it wasn't, I mean, it's obviously been shaped, but it's from Oklahoma. But anyway, we're just having people get together and network, because I think the skills are one thing and jobs are another, but having the chance to put them to use and actually get a job involves people's skills and contacts.
And networking, people always also assume that networking and building your network is easy peasy lemon squeezy. It actually isn't. It actually takes quite a lot of hard work. And I don't think people realize just how much work it takes. So it's not just about going to an event or saying hi to somebody in a virtual chat online. It actually takes quite a bit more effort than that.
So I'm curious, Lesley, so you probably have developed some kind of personal favorites for ways to effectively network. What do you do?
With me, it's always a bit of the personal touch. I was actually taught, believe it or not, by my mother. And my father, who ended up running one of the biggest reinsurance companies in the world, my father said that my mother was his best number 2 because she knew how to build relationships with people. And although people like to keep their private life private, and so they should keep their private life private, when you're actually building a relationship with somebody, you also have to share a little bit. So you maybe don't have to share a lot. It's just, instead of talking all about work all of the time, work, you can actually say to somebody, oh, and whereabouts do you come from? Or where do you go on holiday? Or what kind of things do you like to do? So you're actually building a more one-on-one personal relationship without being intrusive. So you can't do it in an intrusive way. It's got to be 100% non-intrusive. But very often people like to say, oh, when I grew up, I loved going on holiday to the beach, or I loved going to the mountains, or, oh my goodness, when I was a teenager, these are the places and the shops I love to go to.
I like that. As an American, I embarrassingly over disclose all the time, especially with perfect strangers.
Yeah, but asking people, without being intrusive, asking very simple questions that show an interest in the individual rather than just, oh, you work for such and such company. What do you do? Where do you go? How do you do this? How do you do that? You just say, oh, what were you interested in as a kid? I lived, when I was a child, I lived by the seaside. Oh my goodness, did I love walking along the beach and collecting shells?
Did you actually live by the beach?
Yeah.
Which one?
And it was in Scotland.
Was it cold?
Have you ever seen photographs of Edinburgh? Of
Yes.
the old rail bridge in Edinburgh?
Mm-hmm.
Right? I lived in a part of Edinburgh which was not far from that very big rail bridge. It was a place called Cramond, and there was an island there called Cramond Island, and you could walk out when the tide was out. You could walk out to the island, but you had to make sure that you came in before the tide came in, because otherwise you'd be stuck for however many hours.
That's amazing. I'm pretty far from the ocean. I'm in Oklahoma. So.
No, I lived by the ocean. I lived by the sea. I lived
North
by the
Sea,
sea.
yeah.
And that was it was incredible when I was growing up to live that close to the seaside.
And
That's
it's funny.
amazing. I love it.
And we live close to the sea where we are. We're about to the ocean. We're about 10 miles away, and we rarely go. Harold, when was the last time you've been to the ocean? Exactly.
It's been a few years.
Yeah. Well, no, it's so funny. We take it for granted. Everybody would die to be where we are, and we don't go that often. It's just funny how that works out usually. But the ocean is wonderful. It's such an energizing place whenever you go, between the winds and the air. The energy is good in oceans, and any kind of water. It's just good.
Oh yeah,
I just loved living by the seaside. because you could collect all the shells. And I know this is going to sound really crazy, but that my mother started collecting shells when she was a little girl. And then when I had my daughter, she started collecting shells for her granddaughter. And my mother traveled all over the world. And my daughter still has the box of shells from all over the world that her granny collected.
Interesting.
And that to my daughter is special.
So do the shells talk in different languages
wonderful.
when you listen, or no?
Well, when you put them to your ear, they all make different noises, Rick.
Yes,
you
they
know
do.
that.
Yes, they do.
Anyway, enough of Leslie and her shells.
Anyway, and actually enough of the show. We are actually out of time. That was a very quick 30 minutes.
I want to thank you so much because really, Leslie, you've been one of my inspirations and heroes for many years. And so I was thinking,
thank
I
you.
put together, oh my goodness. I mean, when I saw that you were the co-host, I thought, this is amazing. So I feel so privileged.
I've been doing this for a while. Rick, how long have I been co-host now?
Getting close to 3 years, if not over. You're around 3 years.
Yeah, I think it's about 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
But Ruth, Susan, I'm quite happy to get in touch with you again and keep you up to date with what we're doing. And it would be fantastic to have your views and your opinions.
Oh, thank you. Happy to share.
And soon we're going to invite you also, Leslie, to our new show, which is called eBizChat. And we want you to talk a little bit about the charity business and how that's going with some of the challenges because of pandemics and everything else.
Oh, at the moment,
it's
just, there's nothing we can really do.
No.
Because we support charities in Africa, they are effectively on almost total and complete lockdown.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. So it's a very interesting topic, though, that of building and running a charity. It's not that easy. It's a lot of work.
I know. I just so you know, Susan, my nickname is I'm technically a consultant. They wanted to make me chief exec. I said no, I'll be a consultant. But my nickname is Chief Cook and Bottle Washer.
I like that. Well, I would love to know more, and I just, I know we're out of time,
I'll email you.
I guess, countries that suffer from food insecurity now must be really precarious.
And it's going to get
horrendous.
Worse. It's going to get worse. That's the bad part.
Yeah, and you honestly, can you imagine paying a week's minimum wage? I don't know what a week's minimum wage is in the US, but in the UK, the equivalent of a week's minimum wage is what people in Africa pay for a minute on the internet.
Oh, it's not cheap. It's definitely not cheap over there.
Yeah. So
I
week,
know,
and Rick knows because he's in contact with this Eric Kamuri that we both work with.
Yep.
And so what we have in the UK as a minimum wage for a week, that is what it costs them for a minute on the internet.
Yeah, a good salary in some of those areas is very low in terms of what it would be in the West. And the internet costs, I think it's like $50 a month, and you get maybe 3 megabytes down and nothing up. I mean, it's really, really slow.
It's horrendous.
So, yeah. And,
that's why I'm absolutely delighted, Rick, that you're working with Eric.
Oh,
because
Eric's
I
a good
know
guy.
you'll be making sure that it's not costing him money.
No, we've been paying his expenses where we can, and he's very helpful too. He's got a great attitude,
and he's a fully qualified journalist.
Oh, he's a very good writer. Yeah. So
but that things have gotten worse than in Africa in terms of cost, because I remember being in Mozambique, and then also in Kenya. Well, I was in South Africa 2 years ago, but this is like 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I remember sitting in the internet service providers or the telecom company, and they had a little internet cafe and working there. But that was when e-learning was really light. I mean, I just put together a website. So I didn't, and used email. So I didn't have to have all of the extreme bandwidth.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
I've lived in South Africa. I've got family in South Africa, and I've traveled through almost every country in southern
Nice.
Africa. So I
Nice.
know how bad it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to take up your time, but I will be in touch, Susan. And it's been lovely talking to you.
It's been great. Thank you.
And thank you, Susan, also for coming on the show today. And I guess I'll see you on the show later on. So we have a second eBiz chat today at 3 p.m. Pacific time. And Lesley, as always, a pleasure. And if you're watching the show, please subscribe, give us feedback, and don't forget, you can come and engage live on LinkedIn anytime. And we'd love to see more engagement on the show. It's fun. So have a good one, everyone. We will see you next week, and take care. Bye-bye.
Take care,
Thank you.
everyone. Thanks. Bye.